what's up guys? My name is Zack, and for the last week, I've been driving the 2025 Hyundai Ioniq 5N. Below me is a completely electric drivetrain, giving this vehicle 601 horsepower. Now, I am super excited to be making this video because I've spent the last week driving this all over Illinois, and I have plenty of thoughts about it. And yes, we will be talking about the fake revving that it does in our final thoughts segment. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. But let's get back to that all-electric drivetrain. Well, the Ioniq vehicles from Hyundai mean that they are all-electric. This is the Ioniq 5N, but there's also the regular Ioniq 5 and the Ioniq 6. And if you really want to get into the weeds, back in 2020, there was a vehicle called the Hyundai Ioniq. That could be a hybrid, but I have driven the all-electric version, and I'll link that at the end of this video if you'd like some Ioniq lineage. Now, this is the N, meaning it is the performance model at 601 horsepower, and I never thought that the original Ioniq 5 was any slouch. I always thought that it was pretty blisteringly quick, but this is blisteringly quicker. We have several drive modes that we could talk about, and the N also adds a performance mode, actually two performance modes, and we have a boost button on the steering wheel that we'll get to. But basically, this thing is an incredible rocket ship, and for the price to speed index, if you want to call it that, is incredibly large. You get a lot of performance for that price tag, which is interesting to see. Now, we don't have really any transmission or anything to talk about. This is all-wheel drive, and I think it pretty much has to be if you want to grip. How does it feel to drive the Ioniq 5N? Well, I've said in the past, vehicles that have V10s, V12s, V8s, that they can be very two-sided. You could drive them slow and you could drive them fast, but those are drops in the ocean compared to the Ioniq 5N. You can drive this in economy mode, and it feels like a smart car electric. Or you can put it into N mode, unleash all of that power, and it'll tear the skin off of your face. It is truly, truly multi-sided. It can drive like almost anything you want it to be like, including those N modes and the electronic shifting. You can have it drive like a gas car. You can have it drive like an EV. You can have it drive like a rocket ship, and that is beautiful. Visibility is pretty good. Nothing changed there between the standard Ioniq 5 and the Ioniq 5N. The ride is rough. That is one thing that is very noticeable over the standard Ioniq 5, even in its eco setting with all the sport suspension off, to the point where some of my passengers brought it up where they wouldn't in other vehicles. So if you do get the N, that is one compromise you're going to have to make. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have all digital gauges. Now, you can change the look of these a little bit, and I do like that you're able to do that, but I wish that Hyundai would push it a little bit further, give us some more options, but we'll talk about that at the end of the video. On the steering wheel on the left, we have our drive mode select for sport, normal, and eco. We have our adaptive cruise and steering assist, and one of our N buttons, and then off to the right, we have that boost button that will give you 10 seconds of extra power, our mode, volume, skip track, favorite, and phone options, and then our second N button. So when you press these N buttons, you get all of this really, really cool customization for your N modes, and you can make this car perform exactly how you want it to do, and you do that through these hot buttons. You can hit the button at any time, and boom, now you have your selected settings. Off to the left, we do have a climate vent, gauge dimmer switch, traction control off, power tailgate, charge door release, auto holding brake, and power parking brake. And moving on to the door, we have our latch to get in and out, power mirrors, power locks, and power windows. Moving into the center, we get our infotainment display. This is where you'll find your N mode. It also has wireless Apple CarPlay. And we do get a nice 360 camera. Really, really nice for maneuverability here in the Ioniq 5N. However, I always touch on the sounds of nature. And I gotta say, I normally don't listen to sounds of nature. I just like that it's there. This week, I've been on 4 planes in my time with the Ioniq 5N. So I just never paired my phone to it, honestly. So I've just been listening to sounds of nature. like the entire time, pretty much. And I actually like it. I really like it. Down below, we have 2 climate vents and the hazard switch and our climate controls. I really, really like these. These are not going the Kia way of switchable. Everything stays where it's supposed to be, and I love that. We do have heated and ventilated seats, heated steering wheel, which has been nice as it's getting pretty cold here in Chicago. And down below, we have our USB-C inputs for charging and for media input, wireless charger, camera button, and parking sensors. Now, what you'll notice is this giant center console actually usually isn't here in the standard Ioniq 5. They added all of this because this is the high-performance version, and so you could actually use it to brace yourself as you're turning. Otherwise, your legs just kind of flail everywhere. But on it, we also get a USB-C charger, 12-volt outlet, and down below we have cup holders, so we'll do a big friggin' bottle test, and the Ioniq 5N passes. Now here's why this is interesting, because the standard Hyundai Ioniq 5 doesn't have this center console, and so it fails. But if you go up to the performance version, it actually passes the big friggin' bottle test. Then we do have a center console and the seats. The seats are genuine bucket seats. These are performance seats, and I know that because they're hard for me to get in and out of. They are very, very performance oriented. My girlfriend prefers them, but as a bigger guy, they can sometimes be a little much, but they do add to that sportiness of the car. And I don't agree with most sporty seats, so it's nothing special for the Ioniq 5N. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so let's go do a back seat review. All right, we're in the back of the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, and honestly, I fit back here really, really well. This is my driving position, and I have almost a foot between my knee and the seats in front of me. The back seat space of the Ioniq 5N is fantastic, and the Ioniq 5 in general as well. But I feel like, I have no proof of this, but I feel like these seats are thinner. Maybe they're not. Maybe I don't know, but they just feel that way. And I could see the N logo from back here. We also do have pull down cup holders and center console in there. Did I already mention USB-C chargers? They're down there. Nothing really else besides that. I do have vents in the B pillars, which is actually really nice, and sometimes vehicles of this size don't always offer that, so I get my own vent right here, which is nice. We will hop around the back and talk about the trunk and cargo space after a word from our sponsor. Has this ever happened to you?
Oh man, I'm all out of forks.
Why don't you take one out of the dishwasher that's perfectly clean, but don't empty the whole dishwasher?
Wow, that was so simple. But what if my significant other asks if I took something out of the clean dishwasher?
Deny, deny, deny.
Really? That works? Awesome!
Paid for by the American Gaslighting Spouses Association of America. So something I find very funny about the rear end of the Ioniq 5 is that they finally added a rear wiper. The original ones didn't come with a rear wiper. So they've since now added that for all of your wiping needs. Very cool. Anyway, come down here. Button at the bottom of the tailgate, and it pops up like that. Power tailgate, of course. And once you are back here, nothing crazy to report. I don't have any like really cool, obnoxious features back here. This is pretty standard Ioniq 5. We do have a 12-volt outlet down there. And pull this up, we do get some added storage for the at-home charger, some of the briefing materials, things like that. But that's pretty much it. Up here, really simple button. Quick and easy. I love those big blocky LED tails. But there we go. That is the back of the Ioniq 5N. It should also be noted that there is no frunk in the Ioniq 5N. Now, the normal Ioniq 5, I'll show a clip here, does in fact have a frunk underneath the hood. It's a very small storage area that doesn't offer a whole ton of space, but at least it's something. This doesn't have any of that, and you can see it actually has this N plate on here, special for the Ioniq 5N. So if you do buy, I guess that's one downside of the N over the traditional Ioniq 5, like limited or anything like that. It would get a small storage area, but this doesn't. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and this is obviously finished in a very bright orange. No apologies made there, but I like the look of it. You also get some added accents for the Ioniq 5N. It looks a little bit sportier, looks a little bit nicer, and just has road presence, especially the bright, flashy color, of course, but just looking at it, I love the square LED headlights and taillights. I really enjoyed that on the standard Ioniq 5, and that's no different here. Really, really enjoy the look of this car. It's a stunner, and all the neighbors were looking every time I pulled in and out of my garage. However, with all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving the Ioniq 5N for the last week? I love it. It's fast. It's fun. It's great. One of the best EVs on the market. But everyone's burning question, as someone, myself, who has reviewed over 1,600 different cars, and I usually specialize in older gas-powered cars. I love vintage cars. It's a big chunk of the cars that I review here on the channel. How do I feel about this car fake shifting? Well, let's talk about it. So if you're unaware, this vehicle has a mode where you can make it sound like a gasoline car as you're driving, to the point where it will actually fake shift. If you over-rev the engine, you get a 1997 Honda Civic simulator, and you just sit at the red line bouncing off of it until you shift. It gives you shift lights. And it actually limits the power per digital gear, so it feels like you are progressively going up gears, going down gears. If you shift all the way up to 8 while going slow and you put your foot down, you're not going to go anywhere. It actually bogs the quote-unquote engine. So it tries to mimic a gasoline car. How do I feel about it? I love it. I love it, love it, love it. It was so fun to do this, and I'm not bothering anyone. It sounds like a 2-liter turbo rally car, the i20N that they use in World Rallycross, and I love that because it's not blasting into everyone's ears. I love loud cars, but I don't like inconveniencing other people or making other people annoyed with the sound of my car. You get the best of both worlds in here. Now, I get it. It's digital. It's not real. But to live that fantasy and going to the store, it does add fun, personality, and soul to an electric car which categorically doesn't really have any sort of soul or feeling. The Ioniq 5 always had a little bit just because it looks so cool, but driving an EV is normally so dead, so quiet, so numb. This adds a little bit of pizzazz back into it. Now, I have to be fully honest, I also had a Subaru WRX at the same time that I had the loan of this. And after driving the WRX, I turned it off in here. The sounds did kind of get old after a while, but that's the beauty of it, is that I could turn it on and turn it off, and you could drive the entire time of your ownership of this car and never ever go into this mode or do fake shifting. But if you want it, it's there. It doesn't force you into it. If it forced you into it and you had to drive this all the time with those sounds and shifting, that would get annoying and it would be terrible. But I get that chance to choose for myself. I get to choose my own adventure. And so now, I think Hyundai needs to push this a little bit further. Like I said with the gauges, they should take a page out of Ford's book and offer vintage gauges. I would love the gauge cluster from a 1997 Hyundai Tiburon. I would love the gauge cluster from the 1988 Hyundai Excel with its fake little not tachometer. I would love a digital version of that for the gauges. Similarly, Hyundai used to make the Genesis sedan with a 5-liter V8. I would love to buy a download pack. If it was $50, I would do it to make my car sound like a rumbly V8. I would pay $50 for it to sound like an old Hyundai Tiburon or a Genesis, or buy a pack of 3 different sounds for $100, and one of them is this obnoxious blow-off valve every time you let off the gas. I would love that. I hope that Hyundai pushes this further and really offers the most customizable drive you can have. And so you get in the car and you can make it quiet and you could drive in silence. If you've had a long day, turn on the sounds of nature and sit in bliss. Or if you want that heart pumping adrenaline, give me those gauges, give me that vintage feel, that vintage sound. I hope that they do more with it. And I know that there's always going to be people that hate the added sound. They hate that it tries to mimic a gas car. All of that stuff. And I get that. There are people that don't like Spotify, iTunes, or Apple Music, Pandora, whatever. They prefer vinyl because it has that physical touch. Physical media means a lot to a lot of people. But this car doesn't rob you of that. This doesn't invalidate your feelings of that. It just adds it to a computer. Like, remember when Microsoft Sam came out and you could like emulate a voice and everyone thought it was the coolest thing in the world? That's what I'm hoping happens with this. And now voice changers and text-to-speech is so good, I hope that one day I can just sit and download the sound of an F1 car. Or imagine if they did a collab with Airbus and every time you pulled away, this sound happened. Geeks would love it. I would pay $50 for that. That's when I'm okay with microtransactions. If it's additional customizable things, I would pay $50 for a little light pattern in here that does a certain thing. I don't know. I'm getting ahead of myself. What I mean to say is that it's cool. It's fun. It's gimmicky, but you could turn it on and off and you don't have to live with it if you don't want to. And I love that. My throat is starting to hurt from speaking at the top of my lungs for the last couple minutes, so I'm going to end the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Huge thank you to Hyundai for allowing me to borrow their Ioniq 5N for the last 7 days. Huge thank you to Drive Shop for facilitating the cleaning and delivery of this vehicle, and of course, the Midwestern Automotive Media Association. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.